Well, what's happening, Ken? This is your boy C. We in here conversation with Ken Folk. Got a lot of stuff we want to bust down today, but really want to just start off by saying, hey, man, look, we appreciate the show. We appreciate the vibe. We're not in here trying to tear down church. I know we talked a lot about religion and religious stuff, but we're just trying to separate the two. We go to great churches, we get good word and all of that stuff. We appreciate it, but we are really trying to identify what's real and what's not. And so as we bust down the word of the day, we're really taking church to the streets. And that's our whole segment. That's our whole focus. So we're not here to offend anybody, but we do want to make sure that people can really rightly divide and dissect the word. And we encourage everyone to read it for yourself. So we got a fire word today, fellas. And we're taking it out of Matthew. So the scripture is Matthew 5, verse 16. And it says, in the same way, let your light shine before people so that they can see your good deeds and give honor to your Father in heaven. And, man, that's such a fire scripture. It really gives us the play. We a lot of times do things to try to fool people, but these good deeds that they're talking about is real love, real works. We've talked about that, showing love to folks that really can't help you back, and operating with integrity, being helpful, being productive. I've never given money, or I've very seldom given money to a homeless person when they didn't thank God. It's just an immediate reaction that people have when you show generosity. Now, if there's expectation out of you, then people don't necessarily reach up and thank God for you. But when you do something out of love, a random act of kindness, it's generally associated with God. And so this is that light that we supposed to be shining, man. Us being out in here in the world, showing different acts of kindness. And the positions and the platforms that we're blessed to have, operating in generosity, operating in productivity, operating in integrity. That's that light that's shining. So at the beginning, it's a very short little thing when it says salt and light, and I thought it was worth us really identifying or relaying this to the viewers or the listeners. It starts at 13. It says, you are the salt of the earth, but if salt loses its flavor, how can it be made salty again? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled on by people. You are the light of the world. A city located on a hill cannot be hidden. People do not light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a lampstand, and it gives light to all in the house. And then it says, in the same way, let your light shine before people so that they can see your good deeds and give honor to your Father in heaven. And what I'm challenging everybody that's a believer is, man, we got to get out of the salt business. There was no value associated with salt prior to that verse or even after that verse. I don't know why we have taken that little parable and saying that we're the salt of the earth, when Jesus is clearly saying that the saltiness is no good anymore. The process that the children of Israel had gone through to become salt was no longer valid for them. They were now converting and being influenced by everybody else around them, so they didn't have no saltiness no more. That's why they had been thrown out and trampled on by men, as you read through their history. But light is different than salt. See, salt is processed over time through water hitting the rock and creating evaporation, and then you have salt left over. So Israel, these people were processed over time to be that salt, to be that difference. And the process stopped working. That's why Jesus had to come and infuse light. See, light shows up as light. There's no processing. When he said, let there be light out of his word, light showed up. There was no process. And so again, y'all, I'm saying we are supposed to be light out here. That's what he has constantly called it, light. And how do we become light? How do we show that light? We don't light ourselves. It says no one lights a candle, meaning you have to be lit from externally. God has to light you up. And then God has to place you, and it says places on a table. So you don't even place yourself. We didn't place ourselves in these roles, man. God lit us and put us in these different areas of operation so that we can be light and light up the entire house. So there are not multiple candles in a house. That he put you in that house to be light in that house, just like he put me where I am. So I'm just saying, man, I just think it's a lot of clarity that can be gotten out of that scripture. I like how he used the analogy. He goes on to challenge other sayings that they've heard and said, well, this is what it really means, but this is the context that you really need to put that in. So I just love the scripture, man. I love that he's challenging us to be lights and be amongst people doing good work. And that in turn allows them to give glory to our Father in heaven. So that's what I got out of it, fellas. What y'all got?
Church in the streets.
Good word, Cedar. Good word. As you said that, and looking at the light, I think all of us have light in us, but some people are looking to across the street, at the neighbor or the coworker or their friends at their light and not knowing that they have a light that's shining right now that somebody's looking at themselves and they can be the light. Most of the time when someone wins an award, the first thing they say is, I thank God. That's the first thing they get credit to your point of whenever it's something good and positive, that's when they speak God. But I think in this negative society we're in right now where it seems like the worst, the bad stuff is what sells. If you watch the news, all you see is evil and all the evilness. How do we make light? How do we make light out of that in those situations with the evilness that is out there in such a dark society? Because it seems like we're surrounded by darkness and you see very few bright spots out there. So I guess my challenge and my thinking is how do we take, when we don't feel like we're the light, still taking that as taking it internally, processing it internally that regardless of what situation I'm going through, there's a light shining. I'm breathing right now. Yeah, I don't have the money I want, but I'm at least breathing right now. And that can be a light and positive for somebody that's struggling with something. And just, I guess what I'm saying is taking hold of the blessings that we do have, because it's so easy to look at the negativity in ourselves or in our lives or what's going on with somebody that we know versus what's positive that I can shine on and stand for. Obviously, you're not given a platform when you fail, but I think there's blessings in failure. I've never heard anybody say, I thank God that I didn't win this today. We lost, but I thank God. When I think you can thank God in that. It's a lesson learned. No, even in a loss and a defeat, doesn't mean you didn't learn a valuable lesson that you can take somewhere else and looking at the bright side of it and shining that light. So that's what I'll add to it, see. That's a great message to your point of right now. I think this is what the world needs is light because it's a dark place right now. It's a very dark world from what we're seeing. So.
Hey, Ken, biblically speaking, man, it says you should thank God for adversity because when you're weak and vulnerable, you tend to press into his presence and realize it's not you doing it by your own strength. So that's a great word, man. And I'm going to start off by saying just wishing the Kinfolk community a happy new year. For me, it's a new year, but the plan is the same. Be who God created you to be by living a purpose-driven life, by letting your light shine. You dig? Connected and respected. So me and my partner used to have this saying, man, by turn your light on. Now, on the surface, ain't nothing biblical about that. But once you let it marinate and you get revelation, you understand that everything is attracted to light. Light gives you visibility. So in this context, turn your light on so you can get your shine on. Y'all remember that?
Get your shine on.
All day long. Now, when you do that, your good ways, your good deeds are visible for all to see that the Almighty Father get all the credit. So catch this, Kinfolk. People can't see God in their everyday walk, but they can see you and they can see God in you. So I think the task is to be mindful how you treat people. That coworker that's annoying, that person you ran across downtown that appeared to be homeless and was asking for money, your child that you're raising, your parenting, they seem to be going against the grain right now for the season, that family member or friend that only reach out when they need something or want something. Be mindful how you treat those folk. So let me run down a quick story to y'all. As 2021 was coming to a close, I had an amazing experience. I was going to get lunch after having an amazing time of fellowship with the Lord, kind of doing my meditation. And I was thinking about what I'm going to eat, man. I was struggling where I want to go. What do I want to eat? What do I have a taste for? And I had actually worked out that morning, so I knew later on there was a game coming on. So I was like, look, man, I'm going to want to sit down and watch the game, have some ice cream and cook a snack on something sweet. So let me balance that out and try to get something healthy for lunch. So don't judge me, man. That's just how I get down. That's how I watch the game. But anyway, I blew it, man. So I went to this cafe that serves buffet style, and it ain't far from the crib. I ended up getting some vegetables, but also got some fried chicken. I just couldn't help it. So the whole me trying to eat healthy and balance it out was out the window. But here's where it gets funny, and that's some revelation actually. I took one bite of the chicken, man, and immediately knew that chicken wasn't it. This ain't gonna get it for me. But I was gonna at least eat the vegetables because I bought the food and I'm like, okay, this is a way that I need to get some something good in my body for the day. But I paid for the food and went to the car, and as I tried to eat the vegetables, I realized they didn't give me any utensils. So I drove down the road and I pulled up at Crystal's, thinking I can just go in there and get some plastic silverware, but the lobby was closed. Even thought about going to a little gas station, where you make your coffee in the gas station, maybe get a spoon or something. And I'm like, you know what? I ain't finna do that, man. Let me just throw the food away. But this is where the story gets really, really good. The Holy Spirit arrested me and said, hey, don't throw that food away. So I started driving, man, looking for somewhere else to get food from, because mind you, I have not eaten, plus I got this plate of food that I no longer want. But the moral to the story is one man's trash could be another man's treasure. And so at this point, it was clear as day the Holy Spirit was telling me where to go. And so I pulled up at Walmart a couple blocks away. And at this point, I'm struggling with offering somebody some food that I'd actually had bit off of. And so what I did was I used a pocket knife to cut the piece off where I actually bit. And so at this moment, I saw an individual waiting on the bus at the side of Walmart. And now when I got close, you can clearly see that this individual was in transition in terms of being born one way, but was making a transition to be a transgender. And to be honest, man, I almost didn't do it because I was slightly discouraged, because I had recently tried to buy food for somebody who was homeless. And he told me, yo, bro, I'm good. I don't need nothing from you. But again, the Holy Spirit gave me the confidence to move forward to put me in this divine interaction. So this person that was in transition that was waiting on the bus probably thought I was going to come up and say something negative, right? Can you imagine that? Like most folks probably do, not willing to accept this individual for who they are. And you could tell when I started talking, I ain't had nothing on it. She didn't even want to look at me. I mean, couldn't even make eye contact. And so the Holy Spirit told me what to say. I said, hey, I mean this in the most respectful and humble way. I got a plate of food and wanted to offer it to you. Now, that same individual that didn't have nothing on me lit up as we're talking about light. The individual immediately said, God bless you, because I just got caught trying to steal some food in Walmart. Now, undoubtedly, Walmart let them go, or I would not have had this opportunity to interact with this individual. And so what I felt that day can't be duplicated by a like on Instagram or a retweet on Twitter. So back to the verse that we started with, man. Let your good deeds shine for all to see, so that the Heavenly Father gets all the praise. You dig? That's church in the streets.
That's tough, Ken. I had a similar situation just to that point, man. You know, we often think about trash or leftovers, etc., but even when Jesus fed the 5,000, they gathered up the fragments, right? So there is a purpose for overflow in this abundant nature in which God has blessed us with. And to your point, sometimes we try to do a good thing and it's not the right time. It's not ordained. It wasn't spirit-led. It was just out of your good, something you wanted to do. But when it's spiritual, Ken, that connectivity, man, like to your point, you receive something out of giving. They receive something out of your giving, and God receives something out of your giving. So again, this is what we're called to do, man. This is the light, like salt. Hey, man, you can sprinkle that, but it's not gonna last. Light, you can't create light. Light is placed in you and on you. You can show opportunities to show your light. You can share that in love. But man, I just love that story, B. It's a very practical thing, because sometimes we get confused on what a good deed is and what kind of magnitude it has to have and how many people have to see you do it. The right people saw you do it that day. You, the recipient, and your Father in heaven. So, man, I love that story, Ken. That's just an awesome way to put that very plainly. So, y'all, we're not here talking or preaching against anything. We're just trying to promote this love, this light. And so, man, I appreciate it, Ken. That was just great, man.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. So look, check this out, baby. And if you're a business owner and would like to advertise on the show, man, you can get at us on any of our social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all that. So just to give you some perspective, it's the top of the year and folks will soon be getting their taxes done. So if you are a tax service and you want to advertise on the show, holler at us, man. If you have an online business, you selling t-shirts, sweatshirts, etc., holler at us for an ad spot on the show. God has blessed us tremendously, and our reach has now become international. The numbers going up. So if you want to go to conversationwithkinfolk.com and connect with us if you have an interest. So we about to slide into this next little segment, man. Big deal or not for real. And first off the bat, I'm gonna get at the boys and see what they want to say about this situation. Jackson State University, Coach Prime, Deion Sanders, just recently flipped the #1 football recruit in the country. Depending on which reports you look at, some have him as #1, some have him as #2. Either way, in my opinion, it's a big deal. He flipped him from Florida State, who he originally committed to, and now he's going to Jackson State University. What y'all got on that, fellas?
Ken, I'm going to say that's a big deal. The impact that Prime has had in that community amongst HBCUs, he had God, he clearly has God as his center focus. And again, that's that elevation and that blessing on the work, right? There have been others that have gone to HBCUs without that platform, without that success, but they also have been NFL players. So I am giving a lot of credit to God through Prime for being able to shine a light so bright that somebody will forego going to a major university in Florida to Jackson, Mississippi to go play football. That is a huge deal. And so there is going to be a disruption that's going to happen on normal systems, right? This is getting outside of the system. This is not doing what people think you ought to do. So I think it's a big deal. Kudos to that kid and his family for being able to decipher and discern the opportunity in front of them. And kudos to Jackson State, not just Prime, for the community participation. They have sold out their games. Florida State probably ain't selling out their games right now. I heard that Jackson State's bowl game, I think it's in the Georgia Dome or Mercedes.
Already.
They done sold that out. My Falcons can't even sell that out.
They say we finna turn the A into JU Atlanta, man.
The
whole town. They don't travel too much, but they gonna go to the A because they going from one community to the Black Hollywood in Atlanta, man. So it's gonna be all navy, blue, and white, baby. Jacktown stand up.
Big deal, Ken.
What you got on the Johnny?
Yep. Certainly a big deal, man, to see that. And it's great for the black colleges. And I think it speaks volume. There's so many levels that's going to grow the SWAC schools and black colleges from opportunity standpoint. Most importantly, monetarily. As you see the big endowments that all of the big universities, the Florida States, the Alabamas, and all of them get with the TV deals or whatnot, that's what's the beautiful thing about what Deion is doing and bringing to Jackson State. And it's being duplicated with the other SWAC schools. Have you seen Grambling has hired Hugh Jackson? Tennessee State has Eddie George. Now the coaches are wanting to go to the SWAC because not only are they going to bring those 5-star athletes who are African American who are going to these white schools playing for a 60-year-old white man that won't even stand with them when it's something that's impacting their community. Now we have an option. Now
that's cold.
If my son is good enough to get a scholarship, now I can look at Jackson State or Alcorn State or Texas Southern University as a viable option. Because at the end of the day, most athletes want to go to the NFL. Who better to go learn from than Prime? Who better to go learn from than Hugh Jackson, who got everybody in his Rolodex? So now that pipeline to the NFL is being taken to the SWAC. So now you don't have that excuse, oh, I'm not going there because I won't get the look. You're going to get the look, and you're going to get the culture. Think you've been to a party. Sigma Gamma ain't the same party as the Kappa party or the Omega Psi Phi party over at Jackson State. So now you're getting a total experience from that I know we didn't get the experience during our college time. Now you can go do that and also play football at the high level and also continue your future. So it's a huge deal for the black schools, especially financially. Now we can see this money being poured into those programs to upgrade their facilities. So big deal, homie.
Definitely big deal, man. Y'all know I've been screaming JSU. I grew up on it, man. And so just a couple of things as we slide to the next big deal or not for real situation is This young man, I just respect him, man, so much. I got a ton of respect for him because I actually read his letter that was posted. And just a couple sentences from his letter. It says, sometimes you're called to step into a bigger and brighter purpose than what you envision for yourself. So that's connected to the message we talk about being light, right? He also spoke, as we talk about being light for everybody, he said, it's about lighting the way for others to follow, which connects back to the church in the street segment that we was just talking about. So he is taking this step forward and being bold enough to light the path for others to follow. And so, man, it's definitely a big deal, man. And what I'm going to tell you and Cedar, though, man, is y'all better pencil in them dates so we can get down to Jacktown and catch one of them games, man, because the vibe is absolutely off the chain.
Already, Ken. Already. You just
Yes,
let
sir.
me know, man. And I eat all kind of chicken and barbecue and all that stuff, man. So I'm ready, bro. Like one real point though, like this is circling back. See, we done had this 30, 40 years of success in the SEC so long that we forgot how we got here in the first place. We couldn't go to those schools. So the
That's right.
pipeline from the HBCU to the NFL was created before it was that in the SEC. I
Oh,
think
yeah.
I heard on TV the other day there are 36 Hall of Famers that went
Oh.
to HBCU.
It's 3 or 5 that we all know off the top of our head that was the best at their position. Walter Payton, Jerry Rice. What's the cornerback name that played for the Washington Redskins? Darryl Green.
Kinfolk.
Steve McNair. You know, everybody
list
those
is
household
long.
names.
The
Huh?
list is long.
Oh yeah,
The list is
Michael
long.
Strahan. You know what I'm saying? These are all of them Hall of Famers. You
A
did.
Hall of
So it's
Famers.
definitely a big deal.
That's
Yeah.
right. Good job.
And I'd like to add, and Ron Clark said something so revealing when he's talking about LSU hiring Brian Kelly. He said he wasn't disappointed. It's not about race, but you hired another 60-year-old white man that don't relate to none of these players. But then you go get the former players that are considered greats to come in and be their liaison for the teams. Why not give that coach a chance? Give some of these young coaches or African American coaches an opportunity. I'm talking about at the big schools, away from the SWAC. So since we're seeing they're not getting those opportunities, I hope all of those coaches, a lot of those, I'm gonna say all, I hope most of those coaches would go and seek an opportunity in the SWAC and go show that, hey, I'm just as good a coach as Lincoln Riley, who's given a job at 32. Because we never see a 32-year-old African American coach become a coordinator, more or less a head coach at one of these big prestigious universities.
Well,
So-
speak on it since you got the flow, Johnny Ray. Brian Kelly going to LSU, big deal or not for real?
Not for real. Not for real. No, let me take that back. Yes, a not for real deal. I think it's no different than that good old. It's another extension of that good old boy network. Yeah, you bringing him there. He's not from the South. We saw the clip where he tried to change his accent so he could sound Southern. I don't see him relating to them, but it's that network, that good old boy network that we see in corporate America and everywhere else in society, of how they only comfortable with ones that look like them, I should say, and they can go and lose and get another opportunity, or lose and get $7 million for it. So I don't think it's a big deal. I think LSU still gonna be whack and not beat Alabama by bringing him. Sure, he won in Notre Dame. That's a whole different ball game than the SEC. So I don't think it's a big deal.
Well, a couple things, man. If he just win the state of Louisiana, he gonna put himself in contention to compete because a lot of dogs come out of Louisiana. So just wanted to clarify that, first and foremost. But I'm gonna say it's a big deal, and I'm gonna tell you why. Because I think it sends the wrong message to the youth. Because you just mentioned Ryan Clark and Brian Kelly getting the job, and he spoke about how he can't connect with the players because most of them are black. So he got to go get the former alumni to make this conversation right. But more importantly, him trying to change his accent by getting in front of the folks in Louisiana. So to me, that's a big deal because it doesn't speak to authenticity, right? So you were being fake and you were being a counterfeit. And catch this, kinfolk community. The sheer fact that a counterfeit exists is evident that there's an original version. And so I'm all about being original. I'm all about being authentic. I'm all about being true to who I am. So for me, that was a big deal, and that's kind of a slice out of it that I wanted to kind of park for the kinfolk community. Brian Kelly is the same as most old white coaches that continue to get these opportunities, right? Whereas for black coaches, they're few far in between, and there's some other things that we're going to get into without getting ahead of myself. So for me, from that aspect of it, I think it was a big deal because he sent this message of it's okay to not be authentic. See what you guys, a big deal and not for real, though Brian
Not
Kelly
for
going to
real.
LSU.
Not for real at all. Look, man, this is just a recycling of what people are comfortable with. This hire was not related to the players. This hire was about the boosters and the folks that this coach has to interact with. See, we don't look at the level of who has to connect with the folks spending the money there. And so that's really where I think the disconnect happens when it comes to a black man getting an opportunity, is that he has to stand in the middle of 70 or 80 older, rich white folks and connect on that booster level. And that's where they're uncomfortable a lot of the time. So I am saying this, man, like, if you're the best man for the job or woman for the job, that's fine. But if your track record has shown that you can't win in a big situation, or that you won't commit past the convenience of your connection there, then what, again, does that send? What message does that send to the athletes that you're trying to coach? And so the mere fact that you would change your dialogue and act like people ain't smart enough to know that, that shows you what you think about the people you talking to right then. You think they all idiots. So if you coming in with that high-mindedness, there is no cure for that. Urban Meyer showed us that. We could talk about that in a little bit, but I think this is a not for real. He'll be down there 2 years. Somebody else will come calling, and he'll do what they have been allowed to do, which is dip with no consequence, still be getting paid from 2 or 3 universities, making all this money with all these moves while you minimize the opportunities for those that have been servicing as coordinators, et cetera, for the last 10 years. So I don't see it as a big deal. I don't see it as long lasting, and he definitely ain't finna step in there and make no dent in the SEC, in my opinion.
Kinfolk community, I'll jump in there and chop it up, man, on the social media platforms, man, and let us know if it's a big deal or not a big deal, or not for real, I should say. So as we slide to this next one, man, we want to know, is it a big deal or is it not for real? The January 6th scenario, right? Now the text messages are being released about all these GOP leaders and folks on Fox News that were sending to, I think, Mark Meadows. What his position was, Kinfolk? Chief of staff or something for Donald Trump? Staff. Okay. I'm going to say it's no deal, and I'm going to tell you why. Because it's more the same. GOP protecting their interests. I've always said that lawmakers will say something negative or something to please their base about certain policies, but then privately they'll take advantage of them, right? And so this is kind of a cycle, a repeat of kind of what's been going on since the beginning of time. They throw rocks and hide their hands, right? And so part of me want to say it's a big deal, but this is consistent with how the right actually acts, right? And I always get confused with that, Johnny Ray. The right is who we talking about, right? Okay, good. I don't want to misinform the folks that's listening to us. The bigger part of it is how they deflect and really, man, just what January 6th was really about. It ain't about no more. They want to attack Representative Cheney, who is a Republican, right? So that goes to show when you get out of pocket and go against the grain, they're going to come for you too. So disregard what happened on January the 6th. Disregard my text messages and saying, hey, you know what? Have the president tell those people to go home, because it's not what's in the best interest of our country. It's going to stain everything that you work for and what we are represented as the United States, right? The text messages prove that. But yet again, guess what the Republicans did? They chose party over country. And that's more the same for me, man. So it's not really a big deal. So I'll let y'all get in there and see what y'all want to talk about it, fellas.
I think it's I agree with everything you said, B. I think I do think it is a big deal, because it's not also, in addition to Mark Meadows, all of the Fox newscasters that get on TV today saying that it was a small deal, it wasn't an insurrection, they also sent text messages. So everybody was texting him. Laura Ingraham, Sean Hannity, Tucker Carlson, Mark Meadows, Jim Jordan, the congressman. The bums. All these bums that's getting on TV today saying that wasn't a riot. That was just a tour with some bad actors on it. Those were the same people texting Trump during the insurrection. Hey man, calm your people down. So it's a big deal because it's indicative of what you said from a party standpoint. Not only, and I don't really fault them, because we know they have an agenda. They're getting paid. Whether they're the politicians or the Tucker Carlsons, any of those people that are on TV, they're getting paid. I think it's a big deal because the people that's our neighbors that will go in there today and vote for Trump again and say, oh, it's not a big deal. I've had a conversation with a coworker who told me he wouldn't call it an insurrection because he would think an insurrection would show that 300 people died. I told him 5 died. How is that not enough? I didn't know it was a number to consider the insurrection. And if I use the analogy, if you go rob a bank and you're unsuccessful, do you not get charged? They tried to do a coup and was unsuccessful. So you can't come back and say, no, we can't count as that because it didn't work. No, you tried to rob a bank and got caught. You got to go to jail for that. So I think it's a big deal because I think the average person, we all know, like you said, Mike, the politicians play golf and eat dinner together. Yeah, they get on TV saying that crazy stuff, but then they leave that meeting and go right with their buddy across the aisle and have dinner.
The same functions after hours, absolutely.
But to the average person, they'll have us in our community arguing with our neighbor over this stuff because none of us are getting money off of it. Our neighbors, and like you said, the right, the majority of them are in the same position as everybody else that's on the left. Ain't none of them getting money from this, but they're going and voting these crazy people in to help their interests out. So I think it's a big deal.
Nobody in politics, man, is struggling for money. All those politicians make money in the private sector prior to going into policy to continue to pass laws and create policies that protects their base. But go ahead, see. Is it a big deal or not?
See, I'm going to add one more thing just to the kinfolk. If y'all want to see, till you add to that point on what they're making, Nancy Pelosi came out 2 days and said, they asked her, do you think politicians should be barred from trading stock? I challenge some people to go Google just congressmen and stock and see what pop up of how much money, how much stock these congressmen got. They make the policy.
Stock. Yeah.
In every aspect, in every sector, business sector. They make the laws and then can immediately go and buy stock before that law go into place to come up. But when Nancy Pelosi was asked, should they be barred from it? She said, absolutely not. They should continue that. And on both sides of the aisle, and I don't think they ever will, bar them from being able to trade stock when they're making policy and got all the inside information.
At the height of the pandemic, man, they were buying and trading stock into the pharmaceutical companies who was going to make vaccines. But go ahead, see. Big deal or not for real?
It's not for real. Not that it should not be considered a big deal, not that it should not have real consequences, but none of that's for real. Y'all have said it over and over, like these folks, and I'm talking about all of them. I don't care left or right. All of them playing in the same dirty game. And they all have this mode of operation when it comes to transparency and all of that. And so, again, none of them are putting their texts and emails out there. Remember, we talked about Gruden a little while ago. If all the coaches put their emails and texts out there, then you have a much widespread problem. So I'm not just saying it's right or left. I'm saying these are the ones that they got access to related to this thing. The only takeaway I had is that these folks clearly knew that Trump was in control. They clearly knew that. Even though on TV they were saying that it's not Trump, he didn't have any liability here, they're reaching directly out to the person they feel controls this situation. And so in doing so, that exposed them and their lies to say that he had nothing to do with it, even his lies. So as it relates to the whole investigation, everything is pointing back to him. And the bum wouldn't even answer his own son text, man. He was so baked into the thought that these folks are going to tear it up on my behalf. He didn't care nothing about America. He didn't care nothing about the White House. He just cared about people going out there to doing something for him. And so, y'all, that's why, again, we can't have no kind of stock or faith in these systems, the government, etc. Hey, look, we all benefit. We're in the greatest country on earth. I think it's worth us saying that. We are in the greatest country on earth. We all love being in America with all its good, bad, imperfection, etc. I still wouldn't want to be nowhere else. But it does not mean that we have to turn a blind eye to this. But poor leadership is not new. Lack of leadership is not new. Money and power controlling people beyond even something that they really believe in is not new. So it's not for real because it's not new. That's all I'm saying.
And in regards to the system, man, what we would say is educate your kids that's going to be old enough to vote. Educate your family members and friends who don't believe in voting. That's how you make a difference, man.
Amen. That's right.
All right. So as we slide to the
Mike,
next
I add one last point to that. We all got kids. I know in the school system, I know I was never involved in this, but they got something called a student council. I think that's a very good introduction of having our kids get an understanding of how things work by people that make laws and policy. I mean, something as small as is a student council so that they can see. My son came and wanted to join the student council of his school, which he did, got selected. Now he's seeing like they're putting actions into place and things into place to make the school better. Something as small as planting a garden. But now he's getting to see how the process of how things work. It's a group that come together to make decisions. Be a part of decision makers versus complaining, why they put this ugly flower out here? you can be in that meeting. So take the opportunity when it's there. So I would encourage I would encourage everyone. If you have kids, encourage them to get involved in something as small as a student council, just so that they can start getting an understanding of how a process works. And I think when they get old enough to vote, they'll have a better understanding of why my vote matters versus the craziness. Vote for what? My vote don't count. So
Exactly.
just wanted to leave on that.
On that note, man, I think it's all about educating yourself, which is next topic, big deal or not for real. I think it's also all about the education. We've all heard the term crypto or cryptocurrency, right? And, I think we all come from the era where we used to COD. It was cash on delivery, right? But we all have we have to get acclimated to this wiring system. So educate yourself. Crypto has revolutionized the way we invest, bank, and use money. So just a basic definition, man, is it's digital money to be used over the internet. So Bitcoin, which is a form of cryptocurrency, actually been around since 2008. And it's by far the most recognized. And so for me, it's a big deal because over 7 trillion worth of Bitcoin has been transferred since 2009. 7 trillion. So I would definitely have to say it's a big deal, right? Crypto makes it possible to transfer value online without the need for a middleman, such as a financial institution or a payment processor, right? That allows value to transfer globally almost instantaneously. And that's 24/7 with really low fees. So, I won't get too far into if you're an international businessman, but you already know the checks and balances that you have to go through to transfer money. And so as we see these crypto numbers continue to go up, right, and the potential for the feds to maybe have rates to be raised multiple times next year, I think people are putting themselves in position, not, dare I say, invest, because that's not what this show's about, or telling you what to do. What I would say is to educate yourself. My 2 brothers in here in the show with me will realize this. 16 years ago, when the real estate market and flipping was a big thing, what I said was, you know what, early in my career, as I was starting my family, I say, for me, cars lose value, so why would I spend money on that? I'm going to go put my money in the house and get off the sidelines and try to figure out how do I put myself in position to continue to educate and move further. So I flipped the house back in 2005, and that was my way of getting off the sideline. So again, I'm not telling you to go invest in cryptocurrency, but what I am advising is to educate yourself. So for me, it's a big deal. What y'all got on that, fellas?
I think it's a huge deal, B, to all the points that you just made. There's so many times us, especially the black community, get left behind with things like this. When things are, I guess, in society, we don't even believe in it because we don't see it most of the time. It's not in our neighborhood. They're not talking about it in a barbershop. Or you can't see the tangible. I can't go get it today and put my hands on it. I think this is something, like you said, it's for the future from a global standpoint and exchanging currency. So I won't go in deep on it, but I definitely think it's a big deal of what's to come.
Yeah, I'm going to give it a big not for real. And the reason I say so is that, while it does exchange value, there is no tangible to it, and there is no control or interaction with the government. The governments around the globe, if they can't tax it and control it, they're going to squash it. And so that is the biggest thing, the volatility of it. One day it could be worth $30, the next day it's worth $30,000 just based on activities. Like, I see it as an investment. I see it as something that can be placed in a portfolio. To your point, B, it can raise up in value, but you have to have a way to activate and capture that value. So whether that's selling out of it in that moment to get real cash back from it, but again, I see it as either a major disruptor of what the system is currently, and as much as we kind of champion that, the security of how our money moves is a big deal. If your money is lost in a banking system, you can go to the bank and try to identify what happened there. But when you're talking about just online currencies and there is no point of contact and there is no tangible asset associated with it, you don't have a way to go get your value back. So I see it as more of an investment unless there is some type of integration into the system to where it can be a complement or basic or replacement of the dollar. But I don't see governments allowing multiple streams of transactions to happen in their borders without their control and, more importantly, without their ability to tax it. I did see a commercial this morning saying that now you can put crypto in your IRA account. And again, I see the value of that because now stocks don't have a tangible. mutual funds don't have a tangible. They're associated with something that's tangible, but them themselves don't have a tangible. And so I see it as something along those lines to where I can invest and benefit from the fluctuation of the value. But when it comes to making a transaction, me going buying a car or paying Alabama Power or whoever with crypto, that is a whole system convergence that, again, I don't believe the folks that are controlling the system to that point are comfortable with letting that go. Because the more you open it up, the more people have access. And, power is about controlling access. And I see it as not for real based on the power play, not the potential that it can have, but the powers that be not allowing it to manifest because of this control thing.
And when you get into the community, man, you realize that the whole cryptocurrency and the blockchains that they create to kind of keep it safe, if you will, if I could use that word, not that it's 100%, but they trying to take the government out of it. That's the whole point. So, again, what we're saying is do your homework, you do the math, you go figure it out. But we got one more big deal and not for real before we slide, man. And hope y'all enjoying the conversation. As we always say, leave us comments on any of our platforms, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. You can listen to the show on Spotify, Podbeam, and or Apple Podcasts. So we got one more, is it a big deal or not for real? And that's kind of the COVID and what's going on with the new variant, right? The new mutation, if you will. I'm going to say it's not a big deal. If you look at the news and if you look at the country, I think a lot of folks for the last 2 years are now ready to move forward. And I will go on record to say that there will be one day, will come a day that COVID won't even be in the news, right? I think all three of us this fall in general have started to go out and do more and more, right? We're moving around. I think the perspective was it was so new and the thought process was, man, if I go outside, I'm going to catch COVID. I'm going to put my family at risk. But when you go outside that first time and you come home and you're good, then you do it the 5th time or the 10th time, you start to build up your confidence. And what I'm saying is I want you to be practical. We've all been vaccinated, right? We wear a mask when it's applicable. But more importantly, if you're washing your hands and preventing from putting your hands in your eyes, your nose, or your mouth to where you can, obviously possibly contract the virus, you put yourself in a position to where, you're very low risk to actually contract the virus. But it was so new. And so the media, again, that we've been talking about, they control the narrative. So if they're able to instill fear in you, they can control how you move. And so now we've seen a number of cases on the rise within an NBA and an NFL because people are, quote unquote, letting their guard down, if you will. But I will say this, it's not for real because you now have the vaccine on the front side of it that could help prevent you from possibly getting it. That doesn't mean it's 100%, but it should decrease your chances of getting it. On the back side of that, if you happen to contract COVID, you now can take a COVID test at home and you now can get a prescription and get pills to your crib that will reduce your hospitalization by 40% with one organization and up to 80% with another organization. So as a whole, the country is ready to move forward and taking those steps to do so because, COVID was a new thing, but now we're looking at ways of how we can kind of move forward. And I think more importantly, wherever you are in the process, it's okay. And it's not about being judgmental. If somebody wants to move forward with their lives and do things, that doesn't make them any less smart than you are. It's just that they've gotten peace from their Savior about how do I move forward and how I do things and how do I get back to some sense of normalcy. So for me, it's not really a big deal. And I will repeat, we will get to a point to where COVID won't be making the news every time somebody get it and or pass away. So that's what I got on the fellas.
Yeah, I'm gonna say not for real. I just think that what we're seeing, and especially as it relates to athletics, like we're seeing the NBA and the NFL being impacted on who can play in games, what asymptomatic vaccinated players are having to sit out because they've tested positive. And so they're in an environment to where they're being tested frequently. I would submit that the general population has a lot more positive cases of it than we're aware of because we're not being tested like that. So again, it tells me that the vaccinations are working because here it is. These folks have been vaccinated, not showing symptoms. They're just in a testing regiment to where they're being tested frequently. If our jobs tested us every time we went in, you would hear way more numbers of people that have it, and maybe that will bring some practicality of what it means to have it as a vaccinated individual. obviously we don't want it spread across folks that are not vaccinated. Obviously we don't want the negative impacts. But to your point, B, man, I'm vaccinated and covered. And now that my son, our sons have had an opportunity to be vaccinated, that took a little bit more pressure off of what we're doing outside of the house and coming back. Again, we want to be good stewards, but again, we can't be prisoners of fear. I think there is practicality to it, but again, I believe that the biggest impact is just the testing of it and the uncovering of who actually has it and the impact that that's having on people's psyche, and not let alone my fantasy football team. And so again, I just see it as more testing brings about more cases, but if they're not showing the symptoms, if they're not being hospitalized, if they're not really being benefited, impacted like that, then those organizations, the NFL and NBA, have to figure out another way to do this, because you can't keep having your star players randomly being pulled out of games, and it's decentivizing them to take a vaccination. So if I'm vaccinated, right, and the league is telling me that even if I'm vaccinated, I still run the risk of missing games and all of this stuff as an unvaccinated person would, well, you're trying to balance off if you had any hesitation to begin with. Well, why am I doing this? What's the benefit from me being vaccinated if you're penalizing me as if I'm not? Or I have to make an adjustment on my ability to play based on unvaccinated people. So I just think that's going to be the kind of crossing the road to say, are they going to continue to test and have these mandates on protocols? Or are they going to figure out, hey, if we raise up our vaccination rates and our people are not showing symptoms, we got to let them play. And I just think that's something that those leagues have to figure out. But I'm going to say not for real.
Well, see, you kind of stole what I was about to say on that, because I was going to say it's a big deal. And coming from a selfish perspective, I got 4 people out in week 15 of my fantasy football. Uh-oh. That's a big deal to me personally. But to society, I know as a whole, we talking to the Kinfolk Nation, and some of y'all may not be playing fantasy football, already be put out. It's a big deal to me because now, to your point, star players are being told to sit out the day before the game. That's impacting my fantasy. So now it's all a selfish motive here, a selfish agenda. But that's why it's a big deal to me. But I agree with everything you guys said, especially Mike, what Mike started with, as far as this has been around for 2 years now. As we've seen, the practicality, being practical. If you're in a room with 30 people, put a mask on. I don't care if you're vaccinated or not. Why not protect yourself? Same way washing your hands. Just doing some of the main things from a cleanliness standpoint that we can control. Because one day it won't be on the news because the news put on what sells. And we talk about 8 people died or 80,000 people died. They know people going to watch that. They don't tell you 80,000 people survived from it or had no symptoms at all, even though they had it. You never hear about how many people had it but survived. It's all about the negative side of it, or the bad side, as an intimidation factor. I think we said it early on, and I think we all said early on, we're covered. Now, that don't mean I'm not going to get the vaccination. Say all of us are vaccinated and taking that and being realistic about it. But I'm also not around here worried, okay, if somebody coughed in the store, oh, I got it. I mean, I need to go in panic mode because I feel like I'm covered. So, to me, it's a big deal only because of my fantasy football team, and we got players being put out the day before. But in the whole reality and big scheme of things, it's not a big deal because this is no different than an outbreak of the flu with another variant of the flu that come out each season because the flu mutates. And there are different versions and variations of the flu. But we have a vaccination for it. People get vaccinated and keep it moving.
Yep. So check it out, Kinfolk community. We want you to tap in and give us some comments, thoughts, and or feedback about this new little segment, man. Big deal or not for real. And big deal and not for real can be interchangeable with not a big deal. So, we hope you enjoyed the show. Tap in the next 2 weeks. We're going to be right back with some more juice for you, man. Right now, we gone.
I ain't kidding.